Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming today. We're going to have a couple different presentations. Maxime, in case you haven't been able to see it yet, and Andrew Roberts, I'm assuming, are going to be giving a presentation on the SAMI package, which is part of PyHC. And then Isaiah Smith is going to give a bit of a status on what has been developed so far for the heliophysics software search interface, otherwise known as HSSI, not HSI. Um, I don't have any other big overall updates to announce before. Sean, do you have anything?
Yeah, I've got a small thing real quick. I was
Yeah.
actually going to just give another shout out for the PyHC environment again, if you don't mind me sharing my screen real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to be pulling up this link in our suggested tools page because that's where we are advertising it on the website. But I have been doing work putting together and deploying in Binder a Python environment that has all the PyHC packages. So right here, you got the Python environment. We Dockerize a Python environment with all the PyHC packages and update it nightly. Try it out at this link, or there's this GitHub repo. So if you click this here, it launches Binder, and this should go actually really quickly, and it did. And boom, you get a Jupyter Lab interface, which some people on this call might have seen this before. And I start off with just two notebooks here, an import test. This is all the PyHC packages that come installed in the thing, and just proving that you can import them all in one place. And then I've got unit tests, which just cover the core packages right now, but I will be adding all unit tests eventually for every package that has them at least. If you want to know more information about how this is put together, there's this lovely GitHub repo where I've got the GitHub Actions workflow that's running nightly to check for updates, and we describe what package versions are in here, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I'd appreciate people to check it out. I'm particularly interested to know if you are a package developer. I would like to know if everything that your package is supposed to do works in this environment. Because you can see I've gone and proved that I can import them together, and I've got unit tests for the core packages, but that's all I've got at the moment. So, maybe your package wants like a certain environment variable to be set, or maybe there's like a system library that you rely on that I haven't installed yet. That would be the kind of thing I'd like to know. So if you could please, I'll paste the link in the chat a second time, but yeah, try this out at some point and hopefully it's a useful thing to have in the cloud and more work to come on that in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Great. All right. Well, let's go ahead and have Maxine and Andrew go first.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Maxine. I'm based out of LASP with Julie and John. And I'm presenting today on a Python package that I developed alongside Andrew Roberts, who's also here. So I'm on the IMAP SDC. Andrew's on the Space Weather SOC team. So two different projects, but we had a kind of a shared piece of like a missing piece basically, and so we decided to develop together. So I have this presentation here, which I'll be reusing from a different presentation that we gave on this. Some of you may have already heard about this package. I'm trying to spread the word about it, but it'd be great if we could just do a quick overview, and then we can talk more about kind of maybe the collaborative aspect or the open source aspect or other things that might be interesting to this group, because this project is from two different groups who are both entirely open source, and that I think was a big reason why I was able to come together the way it did. So yes, so Andrew's going to talk first. He can give a little more background on everything, and we'll just quickly go through this. Not all the slides may be relevant. We might just skip past some of them. But yes, okay, so go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to share, but
Oh, did you want to share?
No, my laptop didn't want to let me share on Zoom
Okay.
today, so this works perfect. Um, so SAMI is the shared attribute and metadata management interface for CDF files. Um, the idea of SAMI came out of the Science Data Systems workshop at LASP. There were two workshop sessions last year, one in the spring and one in the fall, with the goal of identifying tool sets or workflows that are shared across science data systems and seeing if there are opportunities for us to collaborate on open source software that the community can use so that there's less duplicate work in these areas. And we can develop things in open source. So one of the things that we had done a lot of work on for the space weather SOC is ISTP metadata management and templating out ISTP attributes, global and variable attributes for CDF files to make sure that they meet our mission data product standards and the ISTP standards for our data products to be archived at SPDF. And it seemed like there was an opportunity for us to collaborate with IMAP to develop a shared interface for this. And so that's how kind of SAMI was born, out of both of us realizing that we needed to do something similar and figuring it would probably be better if we did it together than separate. So SAMI is a tool for ISTP compliance management in your attributes. It is tool agnostic. We only use Python dictionaries and YAML files to template out all of our attributes. This is interesting because although we're both building CDF files to be archived at SPDF, we're using completely different tool sets in order to achieve that. For the space weather SOC, we're using a lot of AstroPy libraries and SpacePy libraries. I think IMAP is using CDFlib and Xarray. So like totally different tool sets for generating CDF files. So we wanted SAMI to be agnostic in that it was not reliant on one like CDF driver. It can validate the attributes against the schemas that are generated from YAML files. We also extend the SPDF's ISTP validation API, which is also used by the web-based SKT editor tool. So we can pipe output from the SPDF validation directly through our Python interface, which is pretty useful. And yeah, it's lightweight, extensible for our different project needs, which is pretty cool. Next slide. So this is an example of one template of a set of global attributes for IMAP. I think it might make sense to go through some more examples of this later, Maxine, like we did the last time. But here, this is just, key value options of global metadata attributes that should apply to all IMAP data products. And the way that the templating and the layering of these files works is that you only have to define these attributes once, and SAMI will be able to layer for all of the instruments that IMAP is using and all of the different data products for those instruments the same set of global attributes that were defined once, so that they don't have to be defined umpteen times across however many skeleton files you might be interested in generating. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a little more background on why we created it. CDF attributes are required for a lot of our projects, or for all CDFs that go to SPDF. We're independently developing similar systems, and we realized we could develop a system for both projects and get something very flexible and extensible, since we're using different libraries for everything else CDF generation related. Where are we? We are on GitHub at spaceweathersock/Sammy. And you can also pip install us from PyPy at pip install Sammy CDF. We're also on readthedocs.org or sammycdf/readthedocs.org. I can probably add that to this slide at some point.
It's linked from the main GitHub page.
It is also linked from our main GitHub page. And we recently just minted a DOI for the first version of our package. So if you use Sammy and you are interested in giving attribution to the package and Maxine and I and our organizations, feel free to, or don't feel free, please. I'm not going to force you, but please do cite that DOI.
Okay, this is the part where I take over. I want to talk a little bit more about the kind of background and what we ended up discussing before we moved forward on Sammy. I think this project only worked because we were both interested in making it work. You know, in the original version of what would become Sammy, it was pretty space weather sock specific. So it did require a fair amount of rewriting to make it work for IMAP as well. IMAP also has 10 instruments on it, so there's a lot of consideration there about sharing work as much as we can, because if we have to do something 10 times, that's really a lot. So that was a big focus on us when we were looking for kind of these tools or looking to make kind of these shared pieces. So when I reached out to Andrew and I said, hey, you have this piece of code in your, embedded in your repository that I'm interested in using, we kind of had to talk about where that would live and who would have responsibilities over it and who would have admin privileges and what kind of tools we'd use on the repositories and things like that. But since both projects were totally open source, it was actually a lot easier than I was expecting to make it work. Once we kind of both agreed that we wanted to move forward on this project and we wanted to share the work and put it on GitHub and make it open source, and that we wanted to commit to kind of putting a little extra work in than maybe we would have for these one-off tools in order to get something reusable. It was actually not as hard as I thought to make that move and make that jump into writing a shared library instead of just kind of taking heavy inspiration and writing my own version of it. But so that was, we had to consider a lot of different things, but luckily we had already used a lot of the same tools and a lot of the same kind of structure in our GitHub repositories because we were following similar standards for open source. So it was pretty simple to pick between the best of two similar options in most cases, for actually managing the repository and writing the code. So how we actually ended up doing that, IMAP is launching this year, so big time crunch. We were able to move to Sammy last year in like November, I think. So this is all kind of pre that. But the initial step, like I said, that did require a fair amount of modification from the IMAP side to make it work for us. So I copied a lot of the code out and kind of rewrote pieces of it and pulled out chunks that we could share, and then added an abstraction layer in the IMAP repository here. So that way we could update the Sammy code without breaking IMAP. So the IMAP code was only looking at this abstraction layer, and I had total control over that. And that API didn't change. But then we can update Sammy behind it and without messing with any of the IMAP code that ended up using it pretty quickly. This also helped, I think, helped the code develop because we could test it against a real use case kind of as we were developing it. As we were writing SAMI, IMAP was using it and doing these iteration steps with scientists and with SPDF and things like that. So we were able to kind of check it right away and see that it was going to work for everybody. And indeed, this version of SAMI looks very different from the current existing SAMI. The current SAMI is a lot better. It has a lot more features and is like more well designed. But since I had this abstraction layer here, updating the SAMI in the back end was not complicated and did not add any complexity from the IMAP side. So I think that was kind of a key piece of it that we could develop without having to worry about going in and breaking the instruments that were already using it. But we could still get the benefit of having people actually using it and actually kind of testing the API and running into issues and getting confused so we could work it out and make it easier to use for people. Oh yeah, and this is similar. Andrew talked a lot about this, about the pieces that were different and then the pieces that are the same. So since we were both kind of using GitHub and Python and these open source standards, we actually had a lot more in common than we had differently, even though we were using totally different libraries and had kind of totally different priorities. So that made it actually a lot easier than I was expecting to share this work and put out this project. Yes, more about standards. I'm a big fan of standards. I think they're very useful to have for different open source projects. So I like the PyHC standards. I think they're great. And I definitely think that the PyHC kind of grading system where you have the different pieces and you're graded against if you have documentation or if you have community guidelines or automatic testing, all those things are really great and definitely something that's worth prioritizing in open source packages. That was all I had from my side. Were there any questions or comments, or Andrew, did I miss anything that you wanted to highlight?
If there are features that you would like to see, please request features on our GitHub.
Can you type the website into the chat, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Great talk, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out on our PyHC standards, Maxine.
I read through them and I was like, oh, these are the exact standards I would have written. Good job.
Beautiful. Yeah, appreciate it. Oh, Mihailo, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so you mentioned at the very beginning that there is a way to ensure ISTP compliance. So recently I've been preparing a database for Wind and preparing it to go out on CDA web. And I've been dealing with this SKT editor, which is the official software, which is ideal based, and it's a huge headache. So can SAMI help out in making sure that once the CDF is produced for a daily set of data for, say, Wind or any other random mission, that ISTP compliance is ensured in terms of field values, attributes, and so on?
Yes, so I'm bringing up this documentation page. This uses the official, I'm also sending it in the Zoom chat. This is the kind of official SPDF validator for CDF files. So it's a little wrapper around the API. You can really quickly, this is all the code you need here. You can really quickly validate CDF files and get a response which checks against that API and checks against the SPDF standards. We also have our own validation, which is not it's not complete, but it is like a kind of a good first pass and can kind of check some of the required attributes, if not all of them. But this validator is a very simple way to quickly update CDF files and run them through the ISTP checker. And it will just print out a very simple text response that, you know, lists off all the errors from that validator. So I found it very useful to use. I kind of use it as a last check after all the validation from SAMI and from CDF-lib is working. This is like the final check. And usually there's not very many things to fix from here. So yes, I would recommend trying this and seeing if it works a little better for you than SKT editor. Or you can try the online, there's like an online validator as well, but I've never used that one. I've only ever used this, this little.
We're actually currently failing that test right now, unfortunately. We're getting bad gateway errors.
API is down.
Yeah. So I need to reach out to Eric.
And also you get to change the attributes directly using SAMI, because PyCDF had some issues with time bases and whatnot, right? Can you use SAMI to just directly change some of the variable and the global attributes?
No, you can't use SAMI to update any kind of an existing CDF file.
Yeah.
That you'd have to use PyCDF for that, or you know, whatever library you're using.
PyCDF has few minor bugs, so it's okay. That will need to be handled then on a different way. But thank you, this is precious.
All right. Any remaining questions for Maxine and Andrew? All right. Well, thanks again, y'all. And just FYI, if you need to point someone to a presentation of your package, we are recording this obviously right now, and I put things up on the PyHC YouTube after, which you can find linked on pyhc.org. So, all right, Isaiah, you are up next with some HSSI preliminary updates.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Hello. And okay, so just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background in case some of you weren't here during the fall meeting we had, but basically HSSI is a sort of central repository for all the tools that you might need to do heliophysics or any sort of space physics research. And because what we have right now is sort of this page here, which is great. It only has Python projects though, and we want to kind of expand HSI to include more than just Python tooling, but other software ecosystems like IDL and whatever else. And it's based off of, I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with the EMAC website, but there's the Exoplanetary Modeling and Analysis Center, which NASA JPL was, or not JPL, sorry, Goddard was so kind to open source and let us use this code base. As you can see the similarities here. But yeah, so this is sort of the main page that opens up when you go to HSSI, and actually the website is live right now, so I can paste a link to that if you want to just kind of mess around, look at it. That's not a URL. We don't have a domain, So it's just currently this IP address. You can address it. Why is the 7 not linked? Okay, well, you have to add a 7 at the end there for it to work. But anyways, yeah, so the landing page that you get to is sort of like this find a resource feature that we have on the website, which is sort of the, I guess, what I imagine most physicists will be using it for, or any sort of research scientists will be using it for, is just finding stuff they need. It allows you to sort of filter out different things that you need. Like if you need something in the general scope that allows you to access data, and whatever else, it just kind of filters out everything in the database, and we get a look at all the different all the different software repositories that are available. And well, we have SAMI up at the top here. You can expand it and sort of look at more information. I think this is not this front end is not really finalized right now, so I'm still kind of figuring out exactly where the best place to put all this information is. And also, I think Julie, along with some other people, are still trying to figure out exactly what the metadata that is going to be stored in the database is. So all this information here is sort of placeholder, but this should be like a general layout for these projects and these tools that you can look at here and interact with by, we'll have the repository listed and the docs, so you can sort of just visit them very easily. And if you need, a different area, you can check out whatever these are. If you want to work with CDF, or if you want to work with FITS, I guess there's no geophysics to have FITS data input outputs right now in the database. But yeah, so that's sort of the idea of the finding a resource. And then the reason why we don't have a lot of projects in here right now is because we haven't, we're just pulling all the resources that we have listed on the PyHC projects page, which is a good amount, but we expect that when people start using this, we're going to have this submit a resource page, and people will start submitting their own, open source packages that they've developed. And so they can fill out this form, give some contact information and the URL. Again, all this metadata is kind of a placeholder, but it will be revised and sort of, I think we're going to be having that information really soon. So this page will probably look very different, but it allows anyone who's using this website to submit their own resources, which we can then, it will create what's called a submission entry, and we can actually log in here. This is, yeah, it's not secure right now, and don't worry, this is not the production server, so I'm not worried about any of you trying to steal a password or anything. Basically, it pops up in submissions, and then this allows us to sort of review it and perform different actions, based on the review process, which we would sort of go through by contacting them and ensuring that all the data is up to date, and then eventually we'll be able to create a resource based on this. So if I just select this resource and press create new resource based on this, I can press go, and this will, from this submission, it'll create what's called a resource entry, which are these, hold on here. The resource entries are the things that show up in the find a resource page. I guess that makes sense. And so yeah, I just created that LCT, where was it? Where did I? LCTZ stretch, resources. Okay, well, something needs more work, I guess, but yeah, normally what would happen is that would pop up in the resources, and then we would be able to find it and go to it. Oh, here it is. And then we can publish it with just by checking this box right here and saving that. And then it'll show up in here if we look at the metadata, which I kind of forget what it would be. I think it would be under, well, no, it has fits and local. And yeah, there, if we can see it here. And again, you know, it doesn't have all the information that we need yet, but yeah, so that's sort of the main gist of it. Yeah, and so another thing I think that we're gonna need to do is, obviously you can see these placeholders up here. We haven't exactly figured out what we're gonna be doing for the logos, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. And the search bar here is basically sort of, it works the same way as the projects page search bar in the PyHC current website, which allows you to sort of type in your own filters. It gives you a list of them here. These are all the ones that I've sort of used as placeholders for the current HSI website. And I haven't actually implemented the search functionality yet, but it should be just, you know, instead of you having to click everywhere. There is also another thing that I think is kind of funky, kind of leftover artifact from the EMAC website, which I'm not really entirely sure what the use case of this is, but when you click on the actual category like header here, it just checks all these. I'm not sure what what use case exactly this would have. I'm not sure in what situation you want to apply all these filters. So I'll probably just replace that with a standard, you know, collapse and expand functionality. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, things are coming along, I feel like, pretty nicely. I think the next step that we're going to try and figure out is, or what we're trying to figure out right now is trying to get a static domain and a static IP address so that, you know, we can actually type in a website, you know, like hssi.org or whatever else. Then we won't have, because right now, the way it is set up right now is every time I spin down the environment and spin it back up, we get a new IP address since it's just Amazon web hosting. So that's not ideal. Obviously, you don't want to have to type in a different address every time you want to look for a resource. And once we have that figured out, then I think we'll start getting people submitting resources. And once we have that metadata situation figured out with the proper fields here that aren't placeholders, then we will have more data, more repositories listed in here, and it will be a much more useful resource. But yeah, in the current state, I feel like it's already actually pretty. It would be a useful resource if, you know, we had more resources, more tools listed on here. But yeah, I'm feeling like it's coming on pretty well. Some of the other features that are actually for, I guess, the people who submit things are any users that are using this website can leave feedback on, you know, whatever resources whatever tools they're using on this website, and that will send an email out to the submitters of that resource and the maintainers of the resource. And I guess also just going over another little nice feature that I added was in the admin page. Do I still have that open? Yes, I do. We can just update a lot of different fields from the repository. It kind of just uses the GitHub API to pull in new information. Right now, it's most useful just for doing the timestamp fields, because not all these repositories are actually on GitHub. And I only have GitHub right now implemented. There are also a lot of people who use GitLab or Bitbucket, or just their own local repository, or remotely hosted repositories that they're managing. And we don't have APIs for those that are implemented. So we will eventually have some sort of metadata scraping thing, and we're working on that. I'm working on that right now. Like I just said, I guess the GitHub one is the only one that I have implemented. But I think that eventually the plan is to sort of have the whole readme.md file also be pulled in and displayed here when you expand this, along with the metadata that we see here, or that the revised metadata rather. And yeah, so I think this is coming along really nicely so far. I think it's going to be a great tool, and I'm looking forward to seeing people use it and submit resources and stuff. I think that's pretty much all I've got to showcase right now. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Isaiah. Glad to see this. Oh, we got double me going
Sorry.
on. Yes.
Sorry, I was just looking at the messages here.
Yeah, sweet. No, obviously you and I work together on this, so I've seen a lot of this before, but actually this was my first time seeing this all filled out with all of the PyHC package metadata and stuff. So it's awesome to see that this is already a better tool for searching through our community's packages than what I had put together on the projects page. So that's exciting. And maybe first question was, if it's too technical, we can talk about it offline, but what is the status of getting like a URL and things like that? Like that, why is that happening later, I guess, instead of what happened first?
Oh, you mean like a domain?
Yeah, like a domain.
Well, I'm just waiting to hear back from from someone, basically, because I'm not entirely sure if we're able to do it through the Helio. What is it called? The hosting service that we're using
Oh, yeah,
now, the
Helio Cloud.
Helio Cloud. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if they'll be able to provide a domain for us, and if they're not, then we're gonna have to figure out a different way to do that. But it kind
Yeah.
of just depends on. I'm just waiting to hear back from someone, so we'll we'll see.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've hosted like a coding challenge for the PyHC website through Helio Cloud before, and they were able to at least give us a spot in like the APL OpenSci domain they have, I think it was. So yeah,
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that before, and that does sound like that would be pretty sweet for us as well.
yeah. Okay, cool. Anyone else who's not me have any questions?
No questions, but I noticed, Rebecca, you're unmuted.
Yes, just waiting my turn. I
No,
guess I
just
should raise my hand, but okay, I'll go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Hi, Isaiah. Nice to see your work coming along so nicely. Yeah, we've been working full steam ahead since before you started to get to the point where our schedules match. It looks like that effort is successful. So we are very excited to pull in what we've been working on into the system you've constructed. And it will change a good chunk of what is seen, but it'll fit nicely, I think, into the structure that you've built. Um, yeah, this is going to be great. If you Yeah, we'll talk
Huh.
details in our own meetings, but this is going to
Awesome.
be.
Yeah. I'm really
I'm
looking forward
excited.
to seeing that, you know, the metadata structure that you guys have decided on, you know, that'll be great.
Any APIs you know of, like, let me rephrase, any metadata you know of that can be retrieved through, say, a GitLab API would also be extremely useful. We haven't explored that quite yet.
Yeah, I've actually touched up on it's very similar to the GitHub API.
Oh,
I haven't implemented the GitLab one yet, but it shouldn't be hard at all. And um, of course, the amount of information that we can actually get from there is a little bit limited. Like I thought it's funny when I was first using the GitHub API, I thought like, oh yeah, it'll be no problem. I'll be able to get the authors very easily. But you have to actually make 2 API calls, and also you only get whatever information they've provided on GitHub, which is usually just like some, you know, random. Like for me, it's tech nostalgic, and I don't have anything about my real name on GitHub, so it's you know, it's not gonna always be the best case to just fetch whatever information is associated with the GitHub or GitLab.
right, we have
Um,
some tricks um, that we've discovered, but I'm interested
cool.
is if anyone knows of a package that would be interested in serving as a test case. So we're obviously going to be using speedas as a test case of something that's not Python and not on GitLab or GitHub. So test case of worst case scenario. Um, maybe that's poorly phrased, but
I think one
but
of
would look
these. I was gonna say I think one of these packages that we have is actually not on GitHub and GitLab. That I can't remember which one it is, but I kept on seeing it, and it just had a link to the Py package. I
right.
can't
So we're going
remember
to
the
be
exact
interested
name.
in seeing like worst case scenario from a metadata standpoint, from an API standpoint, right? Not from a package quality at all. So not meaning that period. Um, but like what information we can get when GitLab and GitHub are not available. Maybe there's a DOI, that would be great, but what can we get when there's no DOI, when there's no GitLab, GitHub? Like what kind of demand does this actually put on the person submitting the package? We are from an open science standpoint, from me being an HRL in that position, we're keenly aware of how boring it is to enter metadata. So we're looking for streamlining all of that stuff. And what does this look like in a worst case scenario? And what kind of burden does that put on the submitter compared to what we're requiring, what we're recommending, all those kinds of things. So interested in yeah, I see you on Jim Lewis. But yeah, once we get through primary examples of SunPy and PySpeedas that we've selected, we're going to be looking at say Speedas as one example that you sent us, but also interested in a second example. Um, something that's not on GitHub or GitLab, might have a DOI, maybe not, but maybe not even be a Python package. Potentially a modeling package. That would be a very interesting use case.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the I mean, I feel like the worst case scenario, you know, is going to be obviously vary between projects, but the worst case scenario would just be that the submitter has to do everything. And I could see cases where that is actually, you know, the case. Like if they just host an executable download on their personal website, you know, then it's just like there's not much we can do at that point um,
Yeah,
for automatically filling out metadata.
another use case that we're going to be searching for is, and I guess I'm asking the group here for it too, is if you know of a package, and I'm thinking of one or two, if you know of a package that the code actually isn't public yet, that would also be a very valuable use case because that would change the way we present the software package. So instead of having, say, a link to the repo, we would have to discuss what that would actually link to when the code isn't open. But one main thing we want to support in the HSSI is the findability for packages where the code is not open and for legitimate reasons like security and um, all of the restrictions that are currently applied to operational codes. We still want them to be findable, but interested in what that's going to look like and really interested in working that out in a good, nice, solid way.
Do we have any other questions from the crowd? Oh, thanks for that suggestion, Jim. If you saw that in the chat, Rebecca.
Yep, thank you.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we can go ahead and wrap early. Thanks again, Isaiah, for this overview of where we're at as far as the HSSI development goes. And you all will be hearing more as we have more updates. And at some point, we'll be doing some usability testing, getting feedback from the crowd and all that good jazz. So look forward to that. That's all I got for you right now. See you again in approximately 2 weeks' time. Same time, same place. Topics TBD.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.